afternoon, Chairman.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger and I'm the Independent Chairman. Can I welcome you all to the Lincolnshire Pension Board virtual meeting this afternoon?
Thank you, Chairman. And I will, if members could confirm that they are present when their name is called. Roger Buttery.
Yes.
Councillor Mark Whittington.
Present.
Jerry Taunton.
Jerry, you're muted.
Sorry, yes, present. Sorry.
Thank you, Jerry. Kim Kamak.
Yes, present.
David Vickers. David, you might be muted. I'll come back to David. Just so you're aware, the following officers are also in attendance. Joe Ray, Head of Pensions, Eunice Gadra, Business Development Manager from West Yorkshire Pension Fund, Claire Mackey, Accounting, Investment and Governance Manager, and myself, I'm Cheryl Evans, Democratic Services Officer. I'll just try Dave again. Dave, are you with us? No, I think Dave might be extremely fabulous.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry,
you. Thank you for confirming.
I think I'm pressing the wrong icon. Yes, I'm here.
Right.
Thank you. Over to you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Cheryl. So, item 1, presumably no apologies.
That's correct, Chairman. Everybody is in attendance.
So let's move to item 2, declarations of members' interests. Well, members of the committee's interests. Any declarations? Your normal one?
There isn't anybody, Chairman, indicating they wish to speak.
I've got a declaration, Cheryl. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this thing. My wife is a recipient of a pension from the pension fund. Thank you.
Thank you. I've note.
My wife is a preferred member of the fund.
Thank you, Jerry. I've made a note.
Cheryl, there's a lot of background noise when people speak. I don't know whether we can do anything about it. I don't know whether others are hearing it. No?
I think we just need to make sure that our microphones are off when we're not speaking, and that should hopefully resolve the issue.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move on then. So we've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of July. Can I request that the board confirm the minutes of that meeting as a correct record? We'll deal with matter arise in a minute. Let's just concentrate on accuracy. Those minutes can be found on pages 5 to 10 of the agenda pack. Can I have someone to, well, I'll propose that the minutes are correct. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll second that as well. David, Roger, I can second that.
Thank you, David. Before we, well, hang on a minute. How do you want to do the show? Do you want everyone to turn on their camera so you could? Can everyone turn on their camera so that there's a show of hands that confirm the accuracy, please? Yeah, Jerry, are you happy? Mark, Kim, David, happy? Yeah.
Could you all just put a show your hands? Yeah, fabulous. That's great. I think everybody else has put their hands up. Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So I can confirm that decision. Are there any matters arising from the minutes before we go on to agenda item 4, please?
Roger, should I be pressing chat, sorry, to say I want to speak, or raise my hand? What's the process? Sorry, I should know.
If you want to type speak, Jerry, into the chat when you want to speak, and I'll alert you to the chat.
Speaking to the chat, okay. Just the item that we both raised, Roger, on the scheme-specific data scores of other LGPS funds.
Yes.
Related, that's not happened, I don't think.
No, Joe, looking at you, are we going to pick that up under Eunice's report, or do you want to deal with it now? This is kind of the benchmarking.
Yes, if we can pick that up under Eunice's report 6 on data scores,
Fine.
if that's okay.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Matters arising on the minutes? No?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Chairman, sorry, Roger. In terms of the minutes, I have to abstain. I wasn't present at the meeting. I was trying to type abstain. I was trying to turn the microphone on, but I wasn't present, so I will have to abstain from them. Thank you. Thanks.
That's fine. I made a note of that, Councillor Whittington. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to agenda item 4, the pension fund update report. And I think that's you, Joe. And can I stress to all the presenters that let's assume that we've all read the reports, and let's just concentrate on 2 or 3 minute presentation and then leave it open to the members of the board to ask questions. Over to you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is your standard quarterly paper, and there are only 2 areas that I'd like to highlight here. The first one is in section 4 on page 14, highlighting 2 additional risks that have been added to the risk register. These were proposed by yourselves at your July meeting and taken to the committee for approval earlier today, where they were approved. They're detailed at paragraph 4.3, and they cover the failure of border to coast and also not meeting the requirements of the pensions regulator. Given the controls that we have in place and that are shown there, it was agreed that they would be considered as green risks. The other area to highlight is section 6 on page 17, which sets out the exit credit policy and the proposed changes to the funding strategy statement to include this policy. Just to give you a bit more background on the exit credit policy, this has been brought in really to protect the fund following regulation changes that came into force in May 2018 and were amended in 2020 following concerns raised by a number of different funds. Prior to these regulations coming in, when an employer left the scheme and a cessation calculation produced a surplus, meaning that they had more assets in the fund than the calculated liabilities, this surplus was retained within the fund. If there was a deficit, so the assets weren't enough to cover the liabilities, then this was recovered from the exiting employer. The regulations changed that and meant that any surplus had to be paid back to the exiting employer. So basically, the new regulation meant that without a policy in place, contractors exiting the scheme could potentially get back large amounts of contributions that they'd paid in, and there have been instances where they could even get more money back than they paid in over their period within the fund, all due to the timing of entry and exit into the scheme and what happened with market conditions over that time period. The policy now clearly sets out the practice that the fund will follow at any cessation event to determine what, if any, amount of surplus will be paid out. As it's a change to the funding strategy statement and a policy that involves employers, this has been sent out for consultation to all employers, and no concerns were received from that consultation, and the policy was approved at the committee meeting this morning. They're the key points that I was going to pull out of the fund update paper, so I'll happily take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Are there any questions, please? Does silence mean no?
I haven't received any requests to speak, Chairman.
Okay. in that case, I assume that the board is content to note the report, in which case I'll propose that the report be noted and we'll move on to the next item of business. So we'll move on to item 5, which is the Pensions Administration Update Report, and that's over to you, Eunice, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just unmute myself and put myself on camera as well. Yeah, this is the quarterly report to the Pensions Board. I'll just go through that. So part 1 of the report is the KPIs. Again, I'll try and keep it brief, and hopefully you can ask me questions at the end. Covering the KPIs for the period 1st of April to 30th of June. You'll see from there that this is the kind of first quarter immediately after lockdown and the new working arrangements. We're very pleased that the KPIs are still quite high. All the SLAs, bar a couple of minor ones, are exceeding their targets, and the actual numbers of cases are quite high as well. So what we've noticed really is that even with the new ways of working, the output is still quite high, and performance is still pretty good. 2 KPIs really to highlight. One being the monthly postings. Reason that has really fell below is again a lot to do with the lockdown and the fact that a lot of the employers were not able to send their returns because they were not in the office or didn't have access to the returns. And then the one on transfer out quotes. This is because we've really had to take stock of how we're dealing with transfer out quotes because of pensions regulator requirements and more stringent checks now because of potential scams that are more prone now because of remote working. So extra stages and extra steps have been built into the processes. There is one other KPI on death in service, but there were only 2 cases and it's just 1 case that fell outside the KPIs. But that was because it was a complicated case, and we had to, because this member had AVCs, we had to obtain fund values from the AVC provider. Section 2, just on scheme information in terms of the different categories of membership within the fund. And then you'll see that we had, in terms of new joiners, we had 111 new joiners employed by Lincolnshire County Council and 341 from the other employers. And likewise, in the 50-50 scheme, 133 members in the 50-50 scheme and 169 from other employers. We had, during this period, 1 employer exiting, no new joiners. Employer member contact, as you know, we do regular surveys, and the last surveys for the last quarter, there was an improved satisfaction score of 92.7%. Last quarter's was one of the lowest at 78.7. But again, I had no reason to kind of identify why that was the case. We had no feedback from members in terms of why some of the scores they marked down were low. Employer training. Our employer training has effectively now been resurrected, albeit online. And in fact, I think it's probably working quite well in the new ways, in that employer training is now not restricted to specific funds. We can open up employer training virtually to all the funds that we administer, which is quite good. Internal disputes procedure, no new appeals either at stage 1 or stage 2 in this quarter. Just 1 old outstanding ombudsman case which has now been resolved. So that's been concluded, and we can draw a line under that one. Section 5 is the administration update. Again, I've mentioned kind of TPR requirements, and we're following the guidance issued by the TPR in that our first priority is making sure members get paid, whether that's processing death or monthly pensions, and then retirement processing as well. So any new retirements coming up receive a much higher priority, and then good supporting good decision making. So these are more to do with making sure when members are making decisions, i.e. to transfer out, they are fully aware of their what they're doing and fully aware of what they're giving up. Annual benefit statements, we issued 99.3% of annual benefit statements by the 31st of August deadline, albeit that the deadline was extended by the TPR because of the current situation. The other ABSs that we weren't able to issue at the time were because we had queries on the members' records in terms of missing information or querying on the pay. I will mention McLeod. I'm sure you're all familiar with the McLeod case. This is to do with the protections that older members had when we changed over from the final salary scheme to the care scheme. That's all been through the courts now, and now there is a consultation out to address the protections or the lack of protections for the younger members. That consultation has just recently closed, and we await the final outcome of the regulations. But we do anticipate that there will be probably up to 30% of fund membership that will be impacted by McLeod, and potentially there is a huge exercise that needs to be undertaken in terms of looking at these members, looking at their benefits, seeing what benefits would have been better, whether in the old scheme or the new scheme, and then recalculating those benefits. And obviously between 2008 and 14 we've had lots of members that have left, retired, transferred out, died, etc. So those are all benefit impact that we will have to go back and reassess. We are already involved at an early stage with McLeod in terms of engaging with our software providers. We're also at the early stages of sending information out to employers in terms of spreadsheets and what information we will require from them. And I guess this is one of the areas that probably we anticipate will cause us major issues in terms of gathering information, gathering hour changes, etc. In that the employers might not have that information anymore, and B, where payroll providers have changed, then it will be difficult to get that information if that payroll provider doesn't exist anymore or doesn't hold the information anymore. So that's certainly an exercise that we anticipate will be quite an extensive exercise, and will place quite a huge burden on our resources. Security breaches. One security breach was logged within this period. It was reported to the Council Data Protection Officer, who deemed that it was an isolated incident and therefore wasn't reported to the Information Commissioner. Information security management. This was a new accreditation we undertook last year. We had an audit undertaken by QMS. Quite pleasing that the audit didn't flag up any non-conformities, and actually made 46 positive observations. Attached to Appendix B is current technical issues. I don't anticipate covering any of the issues there. Hopefully you've read all those issues and familiar with what currently is going on within the LGPS and the wider pensions arena. And finally, Section 8 on this shared service budget. Our cost per member for 1920 came out at £15.87 per member. Our budget for this year is anticipated to be £16.60 per member. the increase in our cost is primarily to do with our planned restructure that has been on the agenda for a while now, which has finally been implemented and hopefully will be fully implemented in the next few months. Potentially as well, there may be additional cost with McLeod as well. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions if anybody's got any questions.
Thank you, Eunice. Jerry, you submitted a couple of questions. Do you want to ask those, or Eunice? I don't know whether you got copies of them.
I have, so I can run through those if you want.
Well, that was the purpose of getting questions in advance.
Yeah.
So, who was the employer that exited?
The employer that exited was David Ross Education Trust.
And
I think it's the contract must ceased by the looks of it.
And Jerry's other part was an exit credit payable.
We are still awaiting cessation valuation from Hyman, so at this moment in time, nothing's been concluded on that.
Okay.
I don't expect there to be any payments to be made, judging from what Joe covered earlier.
Chan, sorry to interrupt. Jo has indicated that she wishes to speak, so I don't know if Jo wants to come in on this point. And also, Councillor Whittington has also asked to speak after you've gone through Jerry's questions.
Okay, let's just deal with Jerry's other question.
Sure. Yeah. The other question, I think Eunice has partly answered it really, is in terms of the McLeod issue about whether extra resources are required or is there software that will be able to cope with the additional requirements? And you sort of answered that in part, I think, really.
Yeah, I've answered it in part. I can give you some more information on that as well.
Okay.
So, yes, we are working with Civica, our pensions software supplier, in terms of bulk calculation facilities, being able to upload the information that we will get back from the employers. So there is a working group set up, which we are part of that working group. So we will be working closely with Civica in terms of our requirements and developments from the system. In terms of additional resources, we will be starting within the next couple of weeks a recruitment exercise to employ a number of new pension officers. Partly because we have vacancies on the structure anyway, because recently we had some senior pension officer appointments, and most of those were internal appointments, so we've got natural vacancies anyway, and our plan is really to set up a small team dedicated looking at McLeod, because what I anticipate is that there potentially may be quite a tight time scale in which to complete this work, but we await the regulations before we know whether that is the case or not.
Okay, Jerry.
Yeah, that's fine. That sounds fine. Yes, thanks, Eunice. Cheers.
Shall we go to Mark next, and then Joe, please? Mark, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Yeah, I think it's the first part of the first one has come in answered by Eunice already. It was regarding the member leaving. I was going to ask who it was, and ask that when a member leaves, do we sort of do a kind of a exit interview or find out the reasons why they've left? And are we? I mean, if a member says they want to leave, is there any requirement on us to sort of ask them if they, where they're transferring their funds to? Because I'm guessing the actual responsibility for providing a pension is the employer, and I'm taking there's no requirement for us to make sure that that's happening. And also, just bit of background as to how sort of the transfer payment is worked out. So that's my first question around the member leaving. I also had McLeod as well down here, and again, part of what I was going to ask has already been answered. But the second part of it, that was, do we know as yet potentially what the financial impact on the value of the fund could be as a result of McLeod? So they're the two that have been partially answered. And the other two questions I had, you referred a bit earlier that there's been a delay in the monthly postings. Is this having any impact on any returns, for instance, that we may need to send to HMRC? And my final thing is something that you raised this morning, Eunice, in the Pensions Committee around scams and the fact that there's a lot of unscrupulous individuals out there who are sort of trying to sort of part pensioners from their lump sums and things. Do we do any work with the police or the fraud people to sort of keep ourselves abreast of the latest sort of scams in order to provide some advice to any of our members? So really, those are my questions. Thanks, Roger. Thanks, Eunice.
Okay, I'll answer some of those. I'm sure Joe will want to come into some of these as well, particularly the ones that are employer related. I'm not sure, Jerry, whether when you talked about the transfers out, because here I'm talking about employer transferring out rather than a member transferring out, which are two entirely different scenarios. Employers usually cease because a lot of employers have subcontracts for, let's say, for cleaning, catering, that kind of stuff. So those contracts are sometimes for specific periods, and then they get awarded to another body, and hence that's why we have employers leaving and joining the fund. So it's not because they're unhappy or employers are unhappy. It's generally just contractual. In terms of McLeod, hopefully I've covered on the admin side. On the fund value side, again, I'm not sure what your fund position is, but certainly within our fund, the actuaries did allow 0.9% of an adjustment to the contribution rate for McLeod, and I'm sure Hyman's will have allowed something similar. Joe probably will clarify on that. On your issue about monthly returns, nothing really to be alarmed at here. I think the issue was when everybody went in lockdown in March. Then obviously because offices, schools, etc., had all closed down. Then during the initial period, there was a delay in getting those monthly returns. Everything's back to normal now, and there's no issue now that everybody's got remote facilities. On the scams issue, no, we don't actually work with the police as such. What we do really is we have the FSA and various other resources that we check against. When somebody wants to transfer out, then we ensure, obviously, we get the details of where they want to transfer out, and we make rigorous checks in terms of whether these are legitimate companies, and then we advise the members to make sure that they've done their due diligence. And then I think as well, where transfer values are over a certain amount, then there is a requirement to take independent advice as well. So there's lots of checks in place, and the transfer out really is the kind of at that very end when we're satisfied that the member is absolutely sure that is the decision they want to take. So hopefully that's answered your questions, and as I said, I think Joe might want to add possibly something to that.
Thank you, Eunice. Shall we go, please? Joe?
Thank you. Yeah, my first point, I just wanted to clarify on the exiting employer. It wasn't David Ross Education Trust. It was Kpis Contract Services, who were a contractor from David Ross Education Trust. So it's not that the academies itself has left the scheme, and that was due just to the end of contract period. On the impact of McLeod on the overall fund, It's immaterial across the whole fund, but there will be different impacts for different employers depending upon their liability profile. So Claire's worked with the actuary in producing their own accounting reports this year, so that they, if they require, can have individual estimates as to what that impact is. But for the fund overall, the impact will probably not be material. And following on from Eunice's point about what we did at the valuation to cover for McLeod, rather than just putting a percentage loading onto all of contribution rates, we increased the probability required of each employer to meet that long-term funding target by 5%, which had the same effect overall of increasing the contribution rate slightly, but we just did it with Hyman's in a slightly different way. Different actuaries offered different solutions as to how that could be taken into account. I think that's hopefully covered all the questions.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members, please? Eunice, just a couple from me, please. You referred to the security breach. What exactly was it? Are you able to share that with us, please? You're on mute. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, hopefully that's better. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Yes, I can share the security breach. So this was a piece of correspondence sent to the wrong address, and this was because when the member wrote in with their request, they also notified us of a change of address, and that change of address was missed. So it was only their request for information that was sent, but it went to their old address rather than the new address that they had moved to. I will add that most of our security breaches that we get, and we do get security breaches, I'm not going to deny that, are one-off cases, one-off involving members where it's human error rather than anything else. And with the volume of information we send out, then we do get these. It's as much training as we do and as much as we can do. We've had occasions where, let's say, 2 pieces of poster put in the same envelope for different people. So it's those kind of scenarios. Obviously, the bigger worrying picture is if it involves a group of members, then that certainly would be a big concern.
Thanks very much for that, Eunice. The other one was a comment, and that was to perhaps you'll pass on the congratulations of getting the annual benefit statements at 99.3% by 31st of August in the COVID environment. I think it's an excellent achievement, so well done.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from board members, please?
Thank you, Chairman. And Jo has indicated that she wishes to speak again.
Jo, over to you, please.
Thank you. It was just to provide a bit of further detail on the security breach process, because what happens on our side, if there's a breach identified in West Yorkshire, then I'm also notified with information, so I can pass that on to our data protection officer so that they can decide whether or not they're content with the action that's been taken. So there's kind of a full process there. So we're completely aware of any action taken on any breaches.
Thanks for that, Jo. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments, please? If not, I'll, if the board's content to note the report, can I propose that the report be noted and we move on to the next item of business? In which case, we'll move to item 6, and that's data scores. That's you, Eunice. Just before we start, this appears to be a copy of the July report. Does that mean that you kind of only run the data scores every 6 months? In which case, unless you've got anything significant to report, I think we should just note it and move on. But over to you. you muted. You muted, Eunice. Can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. I think Cheryl must mute me automatically because I've certainly not muted myself. Just saying thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify the report on data improvement plans. Because you're certainly right, it is an exact replica of the previous report, and the reason being that we are required only to report the data scores to the TPR once a year, and what we've done is we've internally decided that we will run the data report scores twice a year. So again, I think this is something to kind of feed into your work plan, which is later on the agenda, where I've seen that the data scores is up for every meeting, and really I think that's inappropriate, because from meeting to meeting every quarter, that data score will not change, because we certainly won't have run the report to identify what the latest scores are. It's certainly the key kind of period is November, when the next report will be run. And if you look at the appendix, which is the data improvement plan, you will see some of the key dates against some of the data issues, and a lot of those dates are kind of November 21 and some are November 20. So certainly from last time in July, we've certainly not looked at addressing some of the key issues. One of the key data errors is the GMP, which has got quite a lot of errors in there. And the reason for that really is not because the data is incorrect. I suspect there is a issue with our data program, and that is obviously something we need to address before we do the next data return to the pensions regulator. So that's something, as soon as I can get or our IT programmer can get some time available, then we will be rectifying as much as we can that particular error, and hopefully it's something we can rectify, because one of my other concerns on that is if that GMP information isn't on the record in the data and it's on the record in documents, then that's something that's difficult to kind of address, because and what I mean by that is when the data came across to us from Michelle, it may be that the GMP information didn't come across and as what we call structured data, and is just on the record. So if it did come across as structured data, which I hope it did, then it'll be on the record for our IT program to pick up that data. But if it came across just on documents, then obviously we don't have the resources to go through every member record, look at the documents, find the GMP, and then put it in the structured data. But hopefully that is not the case, and it is a simple case of amending the program to pick up that information from the structured data. So that's all I'll say on that, really, is that the data improvement or the data scores, I would suggest is on your work plan twice a year, one in kind of probably is it your January meeting, and then maybe 6 months after that, just so that we can get some kind of proper up-to-date accurate scores, rather than having the same old information every time.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Now you've explained it. So I'm sure Joe and Claire will note that. Joe, did you want to comment on this kind of benchmarking that I think you were doing, or Eunice was doing? In other words, comparing our scheme-specific data with other LGPS funds, please.
Yes, I think Eunice had attempted to get some comparisons from the METS funds, but I don't think they were particularly forthcoming to provide that. So I did this week ask our partner funds across border to coast to provide their scores. And obviously a lot of these are from last November. Some have been run at slightly different time periods. So I managed to get them from 9 funds out of the 10, excluding ourselves. So the common data scores range from 93% to 99.8%, and the average common data was 96.5%. The conditional data is slightly more difficult to get. I'll give you the scores first of all. So they range from 81% to 99%, with an average score of 93.6%. One of the funds, though, hadn't measured this at all yet, and there isn't consistency as to how they're measured. Not all of them have moved to the LGPS standards. So it's not necessarily like for like on the conditional or scheme specific data, but the common data obviously will be.
Well, thanks for that. Jerry, did you want to add any more or ask any more on that one, please?
Not really. No, my only point was that it was obviously the same. There was the same typo, as the same missing point as last time. So as it's the same report, it would be. So just on what Joe just said, the only thing, it would be nice to see a summary of that sent out, if possible, some sort of summary that she just said about the benchmarking, because it did sound like, I appreciate there's caveats on the scheme specific, but the scheme specific sort of sounded higher than what we're seeing, I think, unless I'm mishearing that.
I'm happy to share that. I'm just waiting for one more fund to come back, and then I'm happy to share that information with the board.
Thank you very much for that, Joe. That would be really helpful. And we're noting the point, Eunice, so twice a year. We'll have the next one in January. And given the scores that Joe's just given us, I guess you've got something to aim at. On the other hand, we don't know, that there are some ifs and buts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just sorry if I can just add to that, Chairman. The GMP issue. If we can sort the programme out for that will boost our scores up drastically, because that has probably about, if you look at the data improvement plan, I think it's 12,000 plus errors. So a lot of records where we're not picking up the GMP. And that will make a massive difference to the scores.
Okay, Eunice, thanks for that. Can I ask whether anyone else wishes to ask a question or comment, please?
Yes, Chairman, Joe's asked. Sorry, Chairman. Joe's asked to speak.
Joe, you.
Sorry, thank you. I just wondered if Eunice could just clarify. You're saying that hoping IT can get some time to look at that GMP issue, but obviously the report needs to be run for November and we're halfway through October. So do you think that will be resolved for this return to the regulator?
Yes, that's the plan, Joe, is to sort it out for this return.
Okay,
so we've still got a few more weeks.
Yeah.
It should.
Thank you.
I've raised it with our IT for a while, but I know they've been focusing in on other priority work, so it's on their radar, and as I said, certainly it's planned to be done before we do the return to the TPR.
Thanks, Eunice. Cheryl, is there anyone else indicating they wish to speak?
No, that's everybody, Chairman.
In which case, if the board is content to note the report, I will propose that the report be noted, and we'll receive 6 monthly updates in future, and we'll move on to the next item of business, which is item 7, internal disputes resolution procedures, and that's you again, Eunice. And I don't think you need to go through it in vast detail. We've all had the opportunity to read it, so over to you.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief, Chairman. So this report just explains the Idrp process, because again, each scheme is required to have a 2-stage internal disputes procedure, stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 decisions are kind of what they call first instance decisions, and those decisions can be made both by the employer and by the fund as well, and different decisions. So where it's on amount of benefits payable and previous service, etc., that's made by the fund. Where it's to do with eligibility for membership, what constitutes pensionable pay and final pay, etc., is all made by the employer. Where somebody is unhappy about a decision made or even a decision not being made, then they can go through the disputes procedure. I will add that though, that before the disputes procedure starts, there should be every effort to try and resolve any issues informally, and the internal disputes procedure is a formal procedure. So members can make complaints against the employer or against the fund. Stage 1 decisions are looked at by a person nominated by the employer. Where it's against the fund, then Joe makes those decisions. Where it's against the where it goes to stage 2 and it's against the fund, then it'll be made by myself. And again, likewise, if it's a stage 2 decision against the employer, then I look at those decisions or those cases. And the purpose of looking independently at those is that we do a thorough check in terms of making sure that there's a 6-month time limit in which to submit any disputes. It's a question of gathering all information, reports, background information, and then issuing a determination. And it's similar processes both at stage 1 and stage 2. Key points, I guess, really is that adjudicators cannot make a decision, they cannot replace a decision, but they can go back to the employers and ask them to review their decision. Where it's ill health cases, and this is where the majority of disputes fall, then adequate information needs to be gathered from medical practitioners. Some mistakes that certainly some employers make is when they write to their members to say, oh, the independent medical practitioner has decided that you're not entitled. And that's a key error, because the decision has to be made by the employers and not by the independent medical practitioners. They give advice, but the ultimate decision is by the employer. And we get quite a few, and not specifically from Lincolnshire, but certainly we do deal with a lot of disputes for other pension funds, and a lot of the cases we get are where the employers not exercise the decision correctly. So each stage of the decision, if at stage 1 decisions made, members not happy, they can go to stage 2. Again, if stage 2 decision, members not happy, then they can go to the ombudsman. And I think that's probably section. The possible outcomes are on the internal disputes are either the appeals not upheld or the appeal is upheld, and sometimes it can be partially upheld as well. We do now have powers. I won't say powers, but we do now have authority to issue payments to members to stop any cases going to the pensions ombudsman. Previously, it was only the pensions ombudsman that could make any awards, but the PO has now given some guidance in terms of what financial compensation can be made to members, and depending on the severity of the issue, then that can range. I think it was from £500. Is it up to £2,000? So we try everything we can to, if there's an obvious error being made by either the employer or the fund, then we would try and offer some form of payment to the member to stop any cases going to the pensions ombudsman. Obviously, nobody wants any cases to go there, because that would attract publicity and something that we try and avoid wherever we can. So I'll leave that report there for any questions.
Okay. Cheryl, am I right in thinking that Dave would like to ask a question?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman.
Oh, I'm getting good at this. Dave, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Roger. All I was going to ask really, Eunice, is in view of the Lincolnshire Fund having what? How many we've got? 270 employers who potentially are making decisions, first instance decisions. Do you know who actually is named as the, if you like, as the appointed person? Is it as an ongoing decision on who might act, or do you know who they are?
We don't get involved at stage one of the employers, but it is a named senior officer at the employers. So typically it could be the director of finance, it could be the chief exec. We don't hold that information because it's for each employer to have their own named officer in place. We only get involved at stage two, and then we would, when we gather the information, that's the only time we really know who's made the decision.
Is that okay, Dave?
Yes, Roger. Yeah, I was thinking that it's quite a complex issue, isn't it? That's my point, really. I just wondered, you just don't get involved at all, then, Eunice, at stage one.
No, not at employer level. No, it's only if well, Joe does the stage one against the fund as well. So really, we don't get employed at stage one at all. We don't get involved at stage one.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Cheryl, are there any other questions? I've got one comment to make.
No, there are nobody else wishing to speak, Chairman.
Eunice, this is not a criticism of you, but and Joe will probably dismiss it, but I find you, as representing West Yorkshire Pension Fund, doing a stage two as a real conflict of interest, and I'll put it bluntly, I'm pretty uncomfortable with that. And that, as I say, it's not a criticism of you. I'm sure you know, but at the end of the day, West Yorkshire are administering this, and if you like, if there are complaints, then you're actually looking at the stage two appeal, which I just think seems to be wrong. And certainly, you know, my experience in elsewhere, and admittedly not in the public sector but the private sector, is that well, in most cases it goes to the full trustee board at the stage two. But that's merely a comment, okay. And I'll shut up.
No, I will answer that. And again, maybe Joe will want to come into that as well. So previously, it was your legal services that did stage two. It was only more recently that function transferred. We were asked to undertake that function, and we agreed to do so. Yes, you're right in terms of it might feel or look odd, but again, I think as I've kind of mentioned in the report, I do act as totally independent because I don't get involved with the day-to-day running of the scheme or with how the administration is undertaken. So when I look at these cases, they are purely independently. And yeah, it's fair to say that sometimes criticism is made of the fund as well in some of my outcomes as well, if there's any wrongdoings found. But yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Joe, please.
Yeah, yeah. If I can just comment on that too. We did discuss conflicts of interest before we asked West Yorkshire to take on this role for us. The issues with doing it with legal is the costs were getting higher and higher and higher because of the information that they had to go back and get and understanding the regulations, and it might be a different person. So the legal costs had got incredibly large in doing stage twos, but we did satisfy ourselves that there were things in place to ensure that there was no conflict of interest. And we do see the letters and the responses that go out on a stage 2, they follow a very clear process where they lay out what's been looked at. That might be my internet. Can you hear me now?
My pen.
Can you hear me now?
Joe, that's better.
Apologies, it must be my internet slipping in and out. I don't know where you heard up to. The format for the stage 2 response it's quite formulaic, so it sets out all that's been looked at, all the regulations around the issue, what the findings are. So, and I do see all the stage 2 responses that go out, and absolutely there's been plenty of times when, you know, it has found that no, actually that needs to go back to the employer, or that needs to go back to the admin authority, or we should have to, you know, there was maladministration or some other such issue. So I'm content that it is done in a satisfactory way to avoid that conflict.
Okay, well, I'll bow to your judgment. Are there any other questions on this item, please?
No, Chairman.
No, in which case, if the board is content, I propose that the report be noted and we move on to the next item of business, which is item 8, the employer monthly submissions. And I guess this is Claire. Thank you, Claire.
It is. Thank you very much. This is the standard quarterly update on late and incorrect employer submissions. And the report today covers the first quarter of 2021. The number of late payments and data submissions are set out in Table 1, which can be found on page 74. As you can see, we're analysing the data in a little bit more detail this year than we did last, with incorrect employer information being split between late payment of cash contributions, late submission of the supporting data, both late payment of cash and submission of data, and where the cash and data are submitted on time, but they do not match, there's a mismatch between them, or we believe there's an error in the data. As you can see, the data submissions were poor in the first month of the year. This is often the case with an increase in late data in April, as we see employers change payroll provider at the beginning of the financial year. And as you can see, these teething problems were largely resolved by May. One of the fund's larger payroll providers has also experienced trouble with submitting data. This employer has been referred to the pension fund representatives at West Yorkshire for further training and support required. And by way of an update, we have seen improvement in the timeliness of their submissions in following months, although more recently this has been a little offset as they've had some staff turnover, which has had an impact on data submission more recently. Details of individual employer returns are set out in Appendix A, and details of fines are contained at Table 2. And as you can see, that there have been no fines issued in the first quarter of the year. I'm not proposing to say anything else, but I'm very happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions or comments, please?
Nobody's registered, Chairman.
Okay, in which case, thank you very much, Claire. If the board is content to note the report, I propose that the report be noted and we move on to the next item of business, which is item 9, the Pension Fund External Audit Report. And I think that is you, Claire.
It is. The Pension Fund Annual Report and Accounts for 1920 have been prepared and the audit has been substantially completed. A copy of the External Auditor's Audit Completion Report is attached as an appendix and can be found from page 83. There are no material misstatements identified and no unadjusted non-material misstatements for them to report. As was explained at the meeting in July, there are a number of changes that have been made to the draft accounts which were presented at that meeting as a result of additional information relating to liquid asset valuations becoming available to the fund. This information was received over the summer and has been incorporated into the financial statements. Details of these changes are set out in the report at paragraphs 4 to 6, and purely for completeness, a copy of the final pension fund accounts have been attached at Appendix B. The external auditor expects to give an unqualified opinion on the pension fund accounts by the end of October. The opinion contains an emphasis of matter relating to the material valuation uncertainty, which was given by valuers of the property unit trust funds. This isn't exclusive to Lincolnshire Pension Fund. This will be seen across the whole LGPS pension fund landscape. This doesn't affect the unqualified opinion on the accounts, but it does draw the reader's attention to the disclosures which we have made in the accounts in note 5 about this matter. The other unquoted assets classed at level 3 in the fair value hierarchy, and that includes things like private equity and infrastructure, and they're those assets where there are significant unobservable factors which contribute to the valuation calculation. These are still subject to further internal review by the external auditor, and these may also be covered by an emphasis of matter statement. Once the auditor has issued the opinion on the accounts and annual report, these will be shared with all interested parties in the normal way and as set out in the report. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much, Claire. I mean, I guess in July it was unfinished business. This is now finished business. Are there any comments from or questions from board members, please?
Jerry wishes to speak, Chairman.
Right, over to you, Jerry.
Thanks, Roger. Claire, just a question again. I asked the question last time, really. I think you had some issues. What was your thoughts about the audit completion? I know we had, obviously, Roger, we all raised questions about the cost of the audit being very low compared to the value of the fund. Just again, your update on what you thought of Mazars' performance and the audit itself.
I appreciate it's a difficult year for them, particularly with COVID and with the extended period for them to complete their audit. It's been a very long process. We had an initial visit from them at the very beginning of June. We had a follow-up visit in July, and then we had the asset work looked at the very beginning of September. We've had some drip-fed questions since then. And as I've already said, we're still awaiting our opinion, which we hope will be with us by the end of the month. Ideally, it would take less time, but I guess it is exceptional circumstances this year.
Anything else?
No, that's fine. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Roger.
Jerry, I think that was timely, just to remind me that I think I shared all my correspondence with Andrew Crookham, the Director of Resources. And I think you'll probably be aware that, I've got his name now, the guy who's... Sorry?
The Redmond Review?
Yes. What's his name?
Is it Tony Redmond?
Tony Redmond, yes, Sir Tony Redmond Review. He's reported, I mean, my worry is that he will be kind of going to the long grass because it's with the Communities Secretary, Robert Jenrick, isn't it? I mean, he's proposing an Office of Local Audit and Regulation, which is kind of similar themes to the old Audit Commission and what have you, although he stresses that it's not that. But anyway, I mean, we can't do anything. We'll have to wait and see. But I just think it's unfair on the external auditors, but there we are, you know, they're signing off. The one thing I would ask, Claire, is there a date now? I mean, normally it's what, 30th, no, is it 31st of August or 30th September? But has that been pushed forward 3 or 4 months, or?
Yeah, the date for, in a normal year, the date for producing accounts would be the end of May, and the date for receiving an opinion and publishing final accounts would be the end of July. The preparation date pushed to the end of August, albeit we were completed in a draft format by the normal end of May deadline. The opinion deadline for the auditors and publishing final accounts is at the end of November. Right. So they will be well within that if we get the opinion to their timescale of the end of this month.
Okay. Right. So we're going to get signed off in good time.
All being well, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Claire. So can I ask, are there any other questions or comments from board members, Cheryl?
Yes, Chairman, Councillor Whittington would like to speak.
Over to you then, Mark.
Thanks, Roger. I was going to raise the exact same point that you and Jerry had just raised, because I listened, obviously I wasn't at the last meeting, but I listened to your comments at the Pensions Committee this morning, so I was going to sort of just follow up on that, but I think it's been answered in the previous discussion, so I'm okay now. Thanks, Roger.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Anything else, Cheryl? Anybody else?
No, that's everything, Chairman.
So, in which case, if the board's content to note the report, I will propose that the report be noted, and I'll move on to the next item of business, which is training needs. And again, I think that's you, Claire.
It is, thank you, but I will only speak very, very briefly and then hand to the board for your discussion. So this item is the board's normal opportunity to discuss training needs and review any training which has been attended during the last 3 months. Board members have been able to attend a number of virtual sessions over the summer, so I will now hand over to you for your discussion on this training and to consider any future training needs that exist.
Well, thank you very much for the rugby bat. Well, any comments, any questions?
Jerry would like to speak, Chairman.
Sorry?
Jerry,
yeah, please, Jerry.
Hi, yeah, well, I'll just echo what you said, Roger, in your email, and obviously there's been quite a lot of virtual training going on, and I've been to numerous events, certainly a lot of Hyman's sort of bi-weekly updates, and also a couple of Barnet Waddingham SIPFA local pension board events. I think one was called an annual event and one was an autumn update, which covered a lot of ground. So just to make that comment, really. The only other thing I would ask is, maybe it's a question for Joe. I've done a training log, but I'm not sure whether there's a particular format that should be followed for a training log. Maybe I'll send it to Joe and Claire to have a look at. You know, I don't know what, all I've done really is list the things I've been on, and that's it really, apart from who's run it and the dates. So I don't know if there's a standard format for that, for a training log requirement. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Do you want to comment on that, Claire? I mean, I just send mine to you.
Yeah, we don't have a specified format, but if, I know, Roger, you share that with us on a frequent-ish basis, if other members of the board can do the same, then that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. So if you want to send that through, Jerry, we simply make a note of that. So whatever format you've done will be fine for that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Claire. Thank you.
Councillor Whittington would like to speak, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Roger. It was the same point that Jerry's just raised, actually, as well. It's I think I said it may have been a bit lax during the lockdown. I think I attended one LGPS seminar a while ago, and it was for Coast. I'll try and remember the dates that I went on, but presumably all we need to do would be to drop Joe and Claire an email, presumably just to let them know what events we've attended. And I can see Claire nodding, so yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important, Mark, and all board members that record these dates, send them into. I try to send mine into Claire on a quarterly basis, because just in case the regulator comes knocking, as it were, just to see, you know, what sort of training we're doing, whether we're competent to be on the board, you know, that sort of thing. So I think it is important, and perhaps we can formalise that, so we do it on a quarterly basis. Can I just mention 3 or 4 things that that I've been on? I went on this LGPS quarterly webinar, and you know more about this than me, Joe. It's the is it room 151 or something? Is that the one?
Yes, it is. Yes, there's one coming up next week, I think.
Yeah, I have to say, I thought that was absolutely excellent. I really did enjoy it, and I shall be joining it next week. But I thought that's the first one I had attended on the 22nd of July, and you know, it was I don't know, there were a lot of items, a lot of topical items, so I found that very rewarding, and I'd certainly recommended it to other members of the board. Just a couple of other things. I mean, climate change is the big thing at the present time, as and I'm surprised a little bit that the Pensions Committee didn't kind of want more and more on that in terms of that investment manager change, Joe. But anyway, that's beside the point. But you know, with another hat on, I responded to the TCFD consultation paper and also DWP, and presumably this will apply to both public and private pension schemes, in which case the demands are going to be enormous, actually. I kind of look at what I've got at the moment and think, how are we going to do this on some of them? And then the third one I was just going to mention, and it depends how much you love pensions, but I've recently completed, again, the revision of the TPR toolkit for the private sector, which was 11 modules, but there's a lot of new stuff being introduced in there. And again, if anyone's interested, I would recommend it. And finally, I had a session yesterday on the pensions bill, which is going through. And again, I guess some of that will apply to LGPS at some stage. Over to you, Jim.
Yeah, if I could just comment on that. The DWP doesn't directly apply to the LGPS, but it is expected that will feed through into LGPS legislation. And the same for the pensions bill. Some of that doesn't directly apply, but so all of it is expected. I think the LGPS has, compared to private schemes, generally been ahead of the curve, particularly around climate change, etc. But once these come in, we're potentially going to the back. So there's a lot of discussion at the moment about how that is going to be brought in through the LGPS regulations.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Thanks for that. But you're not going to escape it anyway. Cheryl, are there any questions, comments?
Yes, Chairman. Dave would like to come in, and Jerry again.
So, Dave, you first, please.
Okay, all right, Roger. Yeah, all I was going to just mention, there was a sort of a training session that we attended online, didn't we? It was more about Invesco, really, wasn't it? A few weeks ago, I think, Roger, you were on leave or on holiday at the time. But
I wasn't on holiday, Dave.
I think you said he was in Devon. But sorry. And I did try and I did sort of register for a McLeod webinar, but I didn't realise my iPad needed Chrome downloading, so I never did get onto that one. So that was I've had to catch up on that. But I do agree. All I was going to say is it's more difficult, or training does seem to be a little more sort of difficult with the current situation. So all I was going to say, you know, the one you just mentioned, Roger, this room, whatever is it, what you're going on, room 151?
Yes, yeah.
Where is that advertised, if I may ask?
I got an email, Dave, and I can either, I'm sure Joe or Claire could send it on to you. I don't know how I got onto it, but I registered for it and thought I must do this once again because it's absolutely brilliant.
Right, okay. Well, I wasn't aware of that one at all. But, you know, on just the one I did attend, I mean, the Pension Committee and the Pension Board joint training, do you log that one automatically? down as training, or do I need to keep a separate log?
In terms of the training, which is run for the board and committee as a whole, a register is taken, and therefore, if you're at attendance in that, then that is recorded for you. I wonder if, from some of the conversation, if it would be useful if we took away that kind of format related issue to see if there's any best practice, and then if there is, we can share that with the board, and if you're happy, then we could go ahead and work on that basis.
That's fine for me. I mean, I'm just sort of putting my thoughts into the group, really, but that's fine.
No, I think that's a good idea, Claire. I think I'll be surprised if you do find a really, kind of a template. I think I've asked for templates in the past, through PMI and what have you, but nothing forthcoming. So I just do them the way I send them to you, and hope that that's okay. Just a comment, Dave. I'm not sure. I've actually found it quite useful to do the training, because they tend to be very often 1 or 1.5 hour slots, and I found them more comfortable than, having to kind of get on a train and go to London. In fact, something I wouldn't do at the moment anyway. So I found them quite helpful. I mean, obviously, you miss the talking to the delegates and what have you. Although, I mean, the PLSA have had their still going on, their conference this week. And if you want to go into, the talking shops, you can do if you wish. But I tend not to do that. I just listen to what I want to listen to and then pull out. Mark, I think you wanted to comment. Oh no, Jerry it was, sorry.
Yeah, all it was the same thing as Dave, actually, Roger. It sounded like quite an interesting thing that you mentioned, Room 151. I've not seen, I think I see most things advertised, but I've not seen that, and it sounds like quite a good event to go to, so it'd just be nice to have that sent through.
Well, sorry, Claire, go on.
Hopefully the information for the Section 151 should be in your inboxes now or very, very shortly after the training's finished.
Well done.
From Joe, not from myself.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Joe.
I just hope it's the next week's is a good one. Right. Any other comments, questions, Cheryl?
No, that's everything, Chairman.
Okay. Well, if the board's content to note the report, I'll propose that the report be noted, and we'll move on to the next item of business, which is item 11, the work programme. And I think that is you again, Claire.
It is, thank you very much. This is the board's normal opportunity to discuss the future work plan. The current work plan can be found at Appendix A to the report. And if we look in detail at the next board meeting, you can see we've got included there already the normal quarterly items, so the fund update, admin update, and employer monthly submissions. We've also got the twice yearly update on the temporary bank accounts from Eunice from West Yorkshire. And then following the discussion at item 6 on the pension regulators data scores, I think it's proposed that this item would move to twice yearly, and based on Eunice's comments that this would be presented in January following the rerunning of the report in November, and then an update partway through the year for that 6 monthly update. And I would propose July if that seems appropriate to you, Eunice. In addition to those items set out at Appendix A, we've had a request to add to January a border to coast deep dive, and that's come from you, Roger, as chair of the board.
It has, Claire, and I just think it's something that we just need to keep a close scrutiny of, and that's not because I'm suspicious about any misdeeds and what have you. I just think, given that all the assets eventually will move there, I just think we need to continue to review governance of the company, you know, the non-execs, the joint committee, and what have you. And I mean, Joe knows that and I think Joe shares it, that I'm comfortable with representation of two non-execs or two non-execs from from the 11 participating employers. I think that's wrong, but I just think it would help Jerry and Kim, who you know might just see how it all works, because I mean it is a fascinating organisation if you start to look at the chart and the various arrows that go here, there, and everywhere. And you know who's got the golden share with the section 151 officers making the deal. So that's why I would like it, because I think it's important that we keep a watch on it. And it's always something that comes up when I talk to my fellow chairs, actually, of pension boards. Bit of you know, one or two of them a bit disgruntled and what have you. So that's why I wanted it on. And I will try and kind of give a brief beforehand, so that I'm not just leaving you kind of in the lurch. Any other comments or questions on the work programme? Any other suggestions, please?
Joe would like to speak, Chairman.
Jerry?
Joe, sorry.
Joe, sorry.
Thank you. You may have answered it in saying that you'll give us a brief, but I just wondered as well, just to enable us to give plenty of time if required, would it be useful to have any representatives from Border to Coast to come and speak to the board?
No, I've not thought about that one, Joe. I think that might be a good idea. Can I sleep on that one and come back to you? But I think that might be good. Yeah. Have you got anyone in mind?
It would depend on the areas that you wanted to concentrate on. So it wouldn't be that useful to have someone on the investment side, but potentially the client relationship side, or perhaps somebody more. I mean, they've just lost their. I'm trying to remember what Amanda's title was. She ensured all the compliance, etc. I can't remember what her exact title was, but
really. Yeah.
But what we can do, if we find out this sort of information that you'd like, then we can speak to Border to Coast to see who would be most appropriate to come and be able to give you kind of further information and provide you with that reassurance.
I'd certainly be looking for someone kind of a higher status than the client relationship director. That's not a criticism, but yeah, a bit higher than that. Let me ponder on it. I've got a lot on the next few days, but I will get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other suggestions for the work programme, please? Cheryl?
Nobody's wishing to speak, Chairman.
Okay, well, you've presumably made a note of the additional item. So, can I ask if the board is content? Can I propose that the report be noted, and we'll move on to the next item of business? And that is, we're going on to the consideration of exempt information. So can I propose that under section 100 brackets A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Can I seek a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that, Roger.
Thank you, Mark. Cheryl, I think you want all voting members of the committee to turn on their camera.
Yes, please, Chairman. So if all members can just turn on their cameras just for a moment. Just give that a couple of seconds. Just waiting for Kim. Fabulous. And if you could just indicate that you're for the motion by raising your hand.
I don't have a vote.
No, that's right, Chairman. That's unanimous. Thank you. So we'll move into private session now. But if we could just adjourn for 5 minutes, Chairman, just to ensure that the streaming is no longer live.
So we're going to have a 5-minute break. Back at 3:30.
Perfect. Thank you, Chairman.
Is that